Alvarado and Cipriano Vargas, so it was unanimous. Okay, so before we approve the agenda tonight, we would like to move 17A to 9.
I make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
President Smithfield,
Yes.
so we're approving the agenda, so I'd like to pull out of the agenda 15O to be brought back at a future date.
Okay, so that would be 15O.
Yes.
Yes, there's a 15O.
15KK.
And 15KK we're also pulling from the consent calendar. You have it, Chris? Yeah. And so, okay. We have a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
District announcements, Dr. Kimball?
Good evening. As much as I really want to do this myself, I'm very faint of voice, so I'm going to ask Elaine Alexanders to help me for the moment.
Good evening. Oh, I am not on. Hello? Is it on? 2019-20 school year and beyond. Mr. Clevenger is a bilingual educator who has extensive experience leading teachers and building an effective culture for all students and staff. He is a collaborative leader who is committed to improving student achievement through relationships, collaboration, and accountability. Most recently, Joseph was the principal at Sullivan Middle School in Bonzo, where he oversaw all operations. As the assistant principal of Elsinore High School, he oversaw discipline, attendance, English language development, and technology. He graduated from Cal State University San Marcos with a degree in liberal studies and received a Master of Science in Education Leadership from Pepperdine University. Joseph will start his new role with the district on July 1st, and we welcome him. Congratulations.
Where we go?
Thank you.
Awesome. Come this way. All right. On the phone is Cipriano Vargas. Cipriano, act like you're shaking hands.
Great to see you.
Welcome
again.
So, there's a box under that table. Nancy?
Well, you want to come help me? Sure. You know what I do. Board members, you have. However, I know some of you were counting up to 16 events that you attended. And so, in honor of that, Rosemary, come on up here. Yes. It says respect, trust, collaboration, equity. Thank you. Come on up, Rosemary. Yes, come on up. You have a picture of graduated from the graduation scroll. Very glammed up, don't you think? I like it getting it for you. Congratulations. I think we should put them on and stand here and take a picture. Okay. Okay, Martha, come on up. You have a glam cap as well. Yes.
And Rich, you have the non-glam version.
Yes. We kept it manly. Come on up here. Thank you. And Cipriano, if you were here, you also would be modeling a fabulous graduation cap.
You're missing it.
Thank you.
Just set it right next to your name tag, Cipriano.
Thank you.
Perfect, send me a picture.
So somebody needs to take a picture of it. Should we do it? We really owe you a debt of gratitude for all that you've done. We want to thank you for being present, for clapping and shaking hands and clapping and shaking hands. We really appreciate it.
Can we get one more? Yeah, operator error, definitely.
Thanks again. Really appreciate it. And finally, I just want to say thank you to the many retirees in the room. It is tough for us staying behind and seeing that you are ready to blast out. It's bittersweet. We know that you are going to have a fantastic retirement. I'm not saying any specific names because there are so many of you that I will miss somebody if I start talking about who, but really you've left quite an imprint on the district and you'll be sorely missed. So just know that you go with love and we will miss you sincerely. Thanks.
Now we have presentation by community members for items not on the agenda. This is your time to come up and speak to things. We will not engage in conversation. We just take the information, and there is a 20-minute, although I don't have to worry so much tonight, so we're good. Oh, we don't have any cards.
We do have cards.
No, but they're all 6A. Oh, that is 6A.
Good number. It's that hat.
Yes, see, you think it'd make me all smart. Okay, we have Melissa Coulter.
Hello. My name is Melissa Cotter, and I'm the English Department Chair at Vista High. Last week, a team of teachers met across all content areas to discuss reading intervention in our district. And from that meeting, we developed a letter that we sent to the board, but we wanted to make sure that we came here and read it aloud to make sure as many people as possible could hear the data that we came up with. So, do you want to introduce yourself?
My name is Leslie Gonzalez, and I am a Spanish teacher at Vista High School. And it's just very important. It was a lot of team members. We had it was English, science, special education, and myself included. So it was across all content areas, and it's something that's very important to each of us that we try and get some type of program or help. And I will let Melissa go ahead and take over. All right, so the letter began, distinguished board members. Last week, middle and high school ELA and other content area teachers came together for a reading intervention planning work group organized by Ann Green and Susan Ford with the goal of addressing the needs of our struggling readers. Frequently throughout these sessions, we heard the word crisis used to describe the current state of our reading progress across Vista Unified School District. And upon further research, we found that the numbers speak for themselves. For example, of the 1,380 incoming VUSD 9th grade students, more than half will enter reading 7th grade level or below. One might assume that these numbers are a reflection of our high population of ELs and special education populations. However, this crisis comes into sharper focus when we review the reading levels of students who are not identified as English language learners or special ed. For the larger high schools, the data shows that nearly half of the freshman class for the 2019 and 2020 are reading below grade level. When we look at each of the comprehensive high schools individually, we see that there are significant numbers of students at each site reading below grade level. For Mission Vista High School, 32.8% of non-EL, non-SPED students will enter 9th grade this fall reading at 7th grade or below. At VHS, my site, 70.5%
of non-EL and non-SPED students will enter 9th grade reading 7th grade or below. At RBV, 56.8 of non-EL and non-SPED students will enter 9th grade reading at 7th grade level or below. Taking a closer look at those reading below grade level, we see the significant numbers of students are reading far below grade level, 5th grade or lower.
Jennifer Hall.
Picking up from there?
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
We're a tag team. Okay. Yes. Hi, my name is Jennifer Hall. I'm an English teacher and the English department chair at Rancho Buena Vista High School. I was also a signer of this letter and a member of the work team. Currently, our group has identified 109 students at RBV and 103 students at VHS who are non-EL and non-special education, reading at 5th grade level or below. Something has to be done to address this crisis. Our teacher team has come to a point of frustration and inaction. The enormous reading challenges our students face cannot be solved by classroom teachers alone. Originally, the 3 planning days we participated in were advertised as an opportunity to design reading intervention courses for grades 6 through 12. During the first morning, however, it became clear that school sites would not be provided with guidance, staffing, or instructional materials needed to address any of the significant reading deficits we identified. In order to address this critical situation, we are requesting district leadership, professional development, resources, and staffing focused on literacy. Teachers have identified the reading needs of students, but there is very little that we can do as a district team without district leadership. Ann Green, Susan Ford, and Lisa Keese are all retiring this month, leaving us without a district contact for ongoing work in this or any area of secondary ELA curriculum and instruction. Without district coordination and leadership, sites will be left to address these reading deficits individually, leading to a piecemeal and inequitable response to the problem. Our recommendation is that the position of Secondary Director of Curriculum Instruction be filled without delay. In addition, our district requires a professional development plan created and implemented under the guidance of secondary reading specialist. Content teachers need training and support to incorporate reading instruction across the curriculum, and a system of coordinated interventions for struggling readers must be developed. Additionally, all site administrators in our district must be educated on the importance of reading in all content areas, and in the strategies they can use to ensure that this work is occurring. A secondary reading specialist would lead this work to ensure that all VISTA schools have access to the same expertise and resources. Most importantly, reading intervention requires staffing. At the high school level, intensive reading intervention requires a separate intervention course. At RBV, for example, we have projected that 48% of 9th grade students enrolled in non-honors English classes this fall will enter reading at 5th grade level or below. In addition, VHS has projected that 58% of all incoming non-ELD 9th grade students will be reading at 7th grade or below. English classes must maintain A through G standards. Consequently, college prep teachers will not be able to provide the targeted intervention that nearly half of our students will require during their English period. Our team has identified 109 students at RBV who need intervention. Thank you.
Mario Santiago.
Okay, good evening, board, superintendent, and cabinet members. So, my name is Mario Santiago, and pains me to say, but I'm the former WAPAC teacher on special assignment here in the district. So, I wanted to say my 2 cents in terms of that position going away. As I was looking at the notes previously and what was going to be discussed today, looking at the board goal from this past year in terms of graduates being college and career ready when they leave high school. I think we're doing for kids a disservice for those kids and those parents that rely and need a position like that TOSA that was overseeing and supporting this college message, particularly as we strengthen our partnership with Cal State San Marcos and Palomar College. And so whether this is a moot point or not, I felt I still needed to speak on behalf of students and families who have come to me privately and shared that they were shocked that this position is going away and they were not aware. And so in that respect, I had just a few comments or points further to make my point here. One of them is looking at the A through G success, or depending on how you want to look at it, as a glass half full or half empty, with our district typically being under 50% for our kids who are ready for college, whether that's a community college or a university. And that's something that pains me to see, that I see that as a difficult mountain to climb, as this position is being eliminated and less support for the sites. And ultimately, that's going to lead to more pressures to sites, particularly counselors, to provide that message of college opportunities, provide the message of guaranteed admissions. I recently ran into a young lady from Vista High School who happened to be at a soccer team over the weekend playing. She recognized me. Mr. Santiago, you're the wave pack guy. Yes, I am. And I asked her, so what are your plans next year as a rising senior? Are you A through G compliant? Are you checking with your counselor? Do you know where you're going to go, where you're going to apply? I think I'm A through G compliant. I'm not sure what I want to do in terms of my college awareness. And that broke my heart to see a student with that much potential and a first-gen student who still is unsure, because the system here is not currently designed to support students in a way that's going to facilitate that college journey. And so I just wanted to come out and say those couple of pieces on that. Additionally, you may or may not be aware of AB 2015, the RAISE bill coming up in 2021 for a school district to be compliant with. And that whole assembly bill is designed to hold districts accountable so that they are doing what is best for kids in terms of the FAFSA completion, the California DREAM Act completion, so districts are doing more to support those kids. So with that time being done and being said, thank you for your time, and I hope that someone will hopefully bring this into further discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Robert Johnson?
Good evening, board and cabinet and everybody else here. I'm just here to congratulate some of the retirees. If it wasn't for Donna, I probably wouldn't know half the stuff I know about how the district finances is run. We were at one meeting one time, and with the Ron Bennett meeting, and all the budget information is coming through, and all of a sudden everything just clicked. And you have probably the most knowledge at your fingertips than anybody I know. And also, for my wife, Diana, she's also retiring as the director of purchasing. Thank you. I don't talk well in front of people. But we met at Vista High, and because of my aunt was working there also, and I would come in to visit my aunt. And so now it's, August will be 20 years married. So I just want to congratulate you, and I'll be there soon. Thank you, guys.
Luke Anderson.
Okay. Hi there. My name is Luke Anderson, and I'm a freshly christened graduate from Vista. Oh, thank you, sir.
Hey.
Okay. Okay. Hello. Okay, so today I come to present a small research project I conducted as a final capstone for my statistics course. Since I've only 3 minutes, I handed a PowerPoint out there that you guys can go look over after. That shows what I did and all the math behind it. So I performed a 2-sample Z-test for the true proportion of Mission Vista students that have and have not taken advanced math in middle school, and those that are going to 4-year universities. Based on the decision made around 2015, which effectively removed all forms of advanced math throughout the district, it would be logical to, sorry.
If you go over, I will personally forgive the
Okay, let's do this. Okay. It would be logical to conclude that the district believes that these two populations of students are going to four-year colleges at the same rate. Preparing students for college is in fact one of the ways to elevate a district's notoriety. The data I collected shows that at a 3% significance level, assuming all conditions are met, that there is adequate evidence to reject this claim. The students that took advanced math in middle school are going to college at a higher rate than those who didn't. In other words, if the two proportions were exactly the same, there's only a 3% chance that I got the data I did if they were the same. Are you as a board confident that you're adequately preparing these students for success provided this evidence? The mere fact that there's been 5 years without advanced math in this district's middle schools is frankly ridiculous. I concede advanced mathematics is not the only determinant for college admissions, much less competence. However, you continuously preach early intervention for deterrence like narcotics, STDs, and alcoholism, but not for early intervention for opportunities that stimulate growth. You've taken it upon yourself to be the arbiter of success in this district. Uphold that promise. Ignorance is not the appropriate answer. These students need advocates, but most importantly, they need the access. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others?" I ask, what are you doing for this district? Instead of having teachers instructing 0 periods in an attempt to prepare students for higher level math, allow the reintroduction of advanced math to pull families and their students into the district. I'm a Vista Unified native, and I wholeheartedly wish for Vista Unified to be the model of educational excellence and innovation, but that cannot be the case when families are looking to other districts that provide more opportunities. The reintroduction of advanced mathematics is not a blanket fix, but it is one of the crucial steps that need to be taken in order to revitalize the prestige of the district. This issue is widely supported by many students and teachers. All you need to do is ask. I personally am extremely passionate about this topic, and I will be here for the school board at your beck and call. Please consider the evidence in front of you and rationalize the actions this needs to come to fruition. The leaders of the future beg you. Thank you, guys.
Can you leave me your contact information so we can talk some more?
Of course, it's on the PowerPoint.
Cipriano, are you still with us?
I'm here.
Awfully quiet there, bud. Okay, Christina Thackeray.
I'm taking notes, don't worry.
Hi everybody, I've been here a couple of times. I spoke on the magnet group and all that fun, and I want to thank everybody for all their efforts. I really think that there's a lot coming to fruition with that, and I appreciate that we were heard as parents. I don't want you to think I'm just the Nelly complainer, but I do want to talk about the liaisons. I have a former liaison named Jessica Gutierrez at Casitas that I worked with in 2017 through my church ultimately. And with them, we were able to give students new shoes and socks. We were able to provide family meals to people on Thanksgiving, 7 families. And then at Christmas time, we did 20 families. It was all collaborated through the liaison who went the day before each major holiday and delivered all this food. They couldn't do the Pay Less Shoe program because a lot of the parents couldn't transport their kids there. So to me, I felt really, really good about what we were doing. We ended the school year planning birthday party packages for the kids that, they don't get those parties. So it really did mean a lot to me to have that person there that was the middleman that kept everything safe for all the families while our church provided help. There was a great separation, but there was still good things happening. So I just want to put this out there that I know this is a topic of discussion, and I want you to know that all those kids at the school, we had done a mini backpack program for the food also. So some of those kids were getting food from the pantry that was expired. One parent had brought in a can of peaches that had maggots in it. So they did not have good feelings about that food coming home. So we brought in all new backpacks, all new food. Everything was checked by myself, people at our church, and then by the volunteers directed by the liaison. So I'm just asking for you guys to consider that full-time liaison, because I feel like what we're doing, 100% is going to the kids. they're not in that position for the pay. And I think that if you're taking something that's 100% for the kids, we've got to find somewhere else to give, especially when raises are a topic of discussion right now. So I just want to say that, and thank you.
Julie Kelly. Julie Kelly.
I don't think she's here yet.
Okay. Okay, so now we removed. No, 7A. The public hearing.
You're doing good.
Agenda 7A, public hearing pertaining to the increase of statutory school fees. This is the time and place designated for the public hearing pertaining to the increase of statutory school fees. I declare the hearing is now open. Superintendent Donna Caperton will lead us through this process.
Yes, so the state regulates the amount that we can charge for statutory fees when new construction goes into place to mitigate the impacts that it has to our schools. We had this public hearing was advertised in the local paper on June 13th and on June 20th as prescribed by law. We've also posted it on our website, and we've posted it at the district office in our little lovely glass trophy case. The state allocation board is the one that designates what the fees are. Right now, we are the developers who come in and pay for new developments over 500 square feet. We're currently paying $3 for residential and 51 cents for commercial. There's actually been 2 rate increases since the last time we have increased. So we are like 2 times behind. So we're trying to catch up. So we would go from increasing our statutory fee from $3.20 to $3.79 for residential developments, and then from 51 cents for commercial to 61 cents for commercial. We have done the required development fee justification study because of increased costs and inflation. We meet all the requirements. And so this is what the public hearing is about, is to talk about that a little bit, and if anybody has any comments.
Have any written comments been received from any person as to the proceedings?
No written comments have been received.
Is there anyone present who wishes to speak regarding this matter? Hearing that there are no comments, I declare the hearing is now closed. Do board members have any comments they now wish to present regarding this item?
Nope, I'm good.
I would like to say thank you, Donna Caperton. That is a very helpful augmentation to our district's income. Thank you.
Okay.
Sure. Yes.
Okay. The resolution.
Yes, it's under the consent.
Okay. Later in the meeting, as shown on the agenda, the board will consider the adoption of a statutory school facility developer fee increase resolution.
No, you don't have to, it's your done.
Hearing's over. On to BTA.
Okay, BTA. CSEA.
It's been a while. Good evening, board, administration, staff, all retirees, congratulations on your honors. I would like to use a philosophy that I am accustomed to while working here at VUSD. I would like to evaluate the first 6 months of this particular school board's efforts to help make VUSD a better place to learn. The matrix I would like to use is as follows: exceeds requirements, meets requirements, and below requirements. Overall, for this evaluation, I would score the progress of this school board as a standard that is below requirements. There are 3 issues that I would like to use to state my theory tonight. Number 1, fiscal responsibility. As I stand here tonight, this school board has shown in the last 6 months that instead of making the hard decisions and cutting expenses where it is necessary, you have added to the fiscal problem by adding schedules and programs that have not been proven to increase student enrollment. We are here tonight with the hard decisions that have not been made and put the community in a very difficult position of trying to support VUSD when we cannot even manage our finances to provide students with a chance to succeed. Number 2, programs that have no data to support them. The 8-period day that you have committed to in 2020-2021 school year has a very expensive price tag on student achievement. Can VUSD really afford this program? Without the data to show success, why are we trying a variable now when we need to focus on what will give students a chance to succeed within the means that VUSD has right now? Number 3, pitting employee groups against each other. The last pay raise that was granted to VTA and CSEA should have also been given to the confidential supervisory and management group as well. Yes, this is an ongoing large expense. However, these employees do just as much of the hard work as VTA and CSEA employees do. Not granting this compensation truly shows that this school board has no appreciation for any hard work done by employees as a whole, and morale is truly at an all-time low among employees in general. This school board should set an example and do the right thing for all employees. In closing, I would like to add that this school board has lost its grip on what the right thing truly is. All of you should take a deep breath, do the research, and really look at what your vision is for VUSD. I am not convinced that you have a vision statement that you can truly engage in or use to enter into a collaboration with the parents and the community of VUSD. To the employees and community, I ask you to stand up and take back your district. This school board is below requirements in what matters most, and that is to give your children and the students of VUSD a chance to succeed. Thank you for your time.
Feedback. I think I see them sitting in the back. DLAC.
Muy buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Elvis Aparicio, secretaria de VILAC, de la mesa directiva de VILAC. Estoy aquí para darle la información de VILAC.
Good evening, my name is Elvis Aparicio. I'm the secretary for the DLAC committee and I'm here to give a report.
VILAC tuvo su última junta oficial del año escolar el lunes 20 de mayo. Realizamos 2 de nuestras tareas.
DLAC had its last official meeting on Monday, May 20th, and we performed 2 of our tasks.
Tarea número 1, se repasó el borrador del plan maestro de aprendientes de inglés.
Task number 1, we reviewed the draft of the master plan for ELL students.
Tarea número 5, se repasó el criterio de reclasificación.
Task number 5, we reviewed the reclassification criteria.
La mesa directiva de VILAC respetuosamente le solicita a la mesa directiva del distrito.
The DLAC board respectfully requests to the district school board
regresar los maestros de apoyo de ELD a las escuelas, no hacer recortes de los programas para aprendientes de inglés.
To reinstate the DLD support teachers at all the schools and not to make cuts to the ELL programs.
Más capacitación para los directores acerca de aprendientes de inglés.
More training for principals regarding ELL students.
Fondos del título 3 necesitan ser usados para apoyo adicional para aprendientes de inglés en cada escuela.
Title III funds need to be used for additional support for ELL students at each school.
Es todo, muchísimas gracias.
That's all. Thank you so much.
Okay, so this is where we pulled 17A and put it in now.
Yes. I think he's reading right at the moment, but I'd like to introduce our financial advisor to the district, Tim Carty from Piper Jaffray, who's going to go over, there's a presentation that he will be going over about our Series A bond sale for $56.5 million. Tim?
Thank you. Is there a clicker to?
They will advance it, you just have to tell them.
Oh, okay.
Just
Wonderful.
wave your wand.
Wave my wand. Well, good evening, Madam President and members of the board. I'm Tim Carty from Piper Jaffray, the district's financial advisor, and it's nice to see all of you. So I do have some good news to report, and that is the recent completion of our first series of bonds under Measure LL, which was approved, of course, by the voters this past November. A relatively new feature in the law, it's been in existence about 2 or 3 years, is that every time a school district successfully issues general obligation bonds, we come back to the board for what's called a report of final sale, which is fairly brief, but it's just to make sure that you know how everything ended, what the cost is to the taxpayer, what's the final interest rate on the bonds, what were the costs, who got paid what, those kinds of things. So I'll try to go through these fairly briefly, but it's also an opportunity, if you have any questions about the bond sale, the process, how it all happened, please feel free to ask, and I'll be helpful in any way that I can. So if you look at this first slide in this squiggly line, I think we all know that interest rates are low. And so if you look at, this is the last 10 years of interest rates for school bonds in California. And so if you look at that very lower right-hand corner, you can see that when VUSD Unified School District sold its bonds May 23rd, 2019, on a historical basis, we were able to take advantage of very low interest rates. So good value for taxpayers. Just to put it into context, the rates that we were able to achieve on the bonds were not only lower than what we estimated at the time of the ballot back in November, they were even lower than the April presentation to you, the board, when the documentation for the Series A bonds was approved. So I think we took advantage of a very low interest rate environment, good value for the taxpayers in terms of that. There's another reason why we got good value for the taxpayers on this bond issue, and that's the good credit rating that the district was able to obtain from Moody's Investor Service. So if you look at the very top, you see that we received a AA3 credit rating. That puts us in the AA category, which anytime a school district is in the AA category, that opens the opportunity for a lot of different investors to want to participate in the bond issue. And I want to compliment Dr. Kimball and Donna. We went up to San Francisco. We met with the credit rating people. They did an outstanding job representing VUSD Unified School District. And the result was that AA3 credit rating, and you see in the bottom half of the page, I just culled out a couple of the points about the district which Moody's noted in its written report. Participates in the greater San Diego metropolitan economy, and also, if you look at the bottom bullet there, the fact that there was widespread community support, the kind of winning percentage that the district obtained in the election last November, widespread community support for the projects. The district was complimented for the actions you, the board, are taking in terms of addressing the budget. So on the whole, getting a AA3 credit rating, very successful outcome, and the district should be proud of that credit rating. Not trying to give everyone an eye exam here with this particular slide, but this is one of the items that we're required to share with the board. I think the important takeaways on this slide are, if you look at the left-hand side of the page, if you remember back to the election, even though $60 per $100,000 is the most that a unified school district can ask the voters to support in California, We've targeted a tax rate well below that for Measure L. So we've targeted a tax rate, if you look at that top bullet, of about $35.17 per $100,000, well below the $60. As Donna pointed out, if you look at item A, we raised $56.5 million. And then look at 2A. These were 30-year bonds, and the average interest rate, 3.22%, which is just staggeringly low when you think about 30-year fixed rate money, just an extremely low interest rate. And then you see in red, no capital appreciation bonds issued. I just want to point out one item on the right. This is the bond repayment schedule for the Series A bonds. So this is what the taxpayers will be repaying over 30 years. Notice how it drops. It's $8 million in change for a couple of years, then it's almost $7 million. Then see how it drops to about $1.5 million. The reason for that is to create room for our future series bonds. This was only a portion of the $247 million that the voters approved. We want to make sure that when the district needs more money for future projects, we're able to do that. So it's intentional that the repayment schedule drops after the next 2 or 3 years. So I just wanted to share that information with you. This is interesting. This is a listing of, and again, forgive me for the small type on this, but this is a listing of who the major investors were who purchased the Series A bonds. Remember, Stifel Nicholas, they're the bond underwriter. You've met some of their representatives before. So they purchased the bonds for Vista Unified School District, but then they resell them to the investing public. And you can see there's a lot of household names here, insurance companies like Allstate and State Farm. Then you see banks, First Republic Bank. Then you see bond funds. You know, a lot of us have heard of Vanguard and Franklin Templeton. These organizations that have bond funds where people invest. And remember, our bonds are double tax-free. So the investors who own them do not pay income tax, either federal or state, on the interest that they earn. And that's one of the reasons why the interest rates are so low. And then if you see that very bottom entry retail, $80,000, that's just regular folks. The minimum is $5,000. So there were some orders that came in, 5,000 or 10,000, just from individuals, whether they be in California or throughout the country. So that gives you a little feel for who the owners are of these Series A bonds and who we might end up going back to when we come to Series B or Series C down the road. So 2 more slides to go. This is just a little bit of the accounting, the money in and the money out. I would draw your attention to the bottom half of the page under uses where it says building fund. That was the net. So out of the $56.5 million that was sold, the net to the district for projects is that $56,320,000. So there was a little bit of a deduct for transaction costs. You might see that item toward the middle of the page, premium received from investors. One of the things that happens nowadays with bonds is interest rates are so low that investors are willing to pay more than 100 cents on the dollar if they can get a little higher interest rate. Well, that additional more than 100 cents on the dollar belongs to the taxpayers. So that's what they call a premium. So we received almost $5 million in premium from the sale of the bonds. That becomes a credit against what the community owes in the first year on their tax bill. So that money belongs to the taxpayers. But that's a very common phenomenon these days. Almost every school bond has this premium, and it's just a little bit of extra money paid by the investors when they purchase the bonds. And then the final slide in this deck is, I mentioned transaction costs. So there were a variety of participants in the bond offering, and you can see who got paid what. Again, this is a feature that we always share with school boards. You see the bond underwriter, you see the bond and disclosure counsel. Many of you remember Janet Mueller, who's come before the board before, financial advisor Piper Jaffray. You see credit rating folks, And then there's always some miscellaneous costs. And then you see that bottom entry, number 12, contingency. That's just in case any of the bills come in higher than expected, we have a little buffer. But at the end, Donna, if it turns out that that money's left over, that's the district's money, so that just flows back into the project fund to augment your money for facilities. So in closing, I would say, I think this was a home run for Vista Unified School District. Extremely low interest rates, very good credit rating. I think we hit the market at a good time. What will happen from here will be, as you construct your projects, and when the time comes and the need comes for the next series of bonds, then we'll get geared up and we'll come before you and we'll go through the approval process as we have in the past. I'll continue to monitor things like interest rates for you, things like assessed valuation and how that changes year to year, and just generally stay in touch with Dr. Kimball and her staff, and then the business office, and monitor the Measure RL bond program so that we can issue the remaining series of bonds over time when you need it to continue the progress on your project. So I will stop there, and if there's any questions any of you have, or if Donna, you can think of anything, or Dr. Kimball, that I could add or be helpful in any way, I'm happy to do that. And again, nice to see everybody.
When can we anticipate the sale of the next round?
That's a very good question. We actually were talking about that a little bit earlier today. So the paper plan, at the time that we went to the ballot, would have had the next series about 3 years out. So let's say the summer of 2022. However, that can be moved up. That's not locked in stone. The voters did not vote on that. So I would say, remember, the rule is whenever we issue bonds, we have to be able to spend the money within 3 years. So let's say we get to 2020, you've spent the money. You want to move that 2022 bond up to 2020 or up to 2021. We'll be able to do that for you and stay within the tax rate that we've represented to the voters. So on paper, it's 2022, but it can be moved up.
You explain to us what the district's credit rating does to the bond sale?
Yes. So it's a little bit like our own credit score and our own personal lives when we're going to get a car loan or going to get a mortgage. The better the credit score, the better we do with the bank. So the higher the credit rating the school district obtains on its bonds, the lower the interest rate that investors are willing to accept for the bond. And generally, AAA is obviously the highest credit rating. Then you have the AA category. Then you have the single A category. So we're in the AA category, what's called AA3. And that's a very solid credit rating. And that's one of the reasons why the interest rates were so low on the bonds. So hopefully we can maintain that each time we issue bonds, we get rated again. So when we come to Series B, we'll go back to San Francisco, we'll meet with the rating folks, we'll give them an update on our finances, our student enrollment, the economy of the area, how things are doing. We prepared a briefing booklet that was 40 or 45 pages thick, describing every aspect of the district. Dr. Kimball and Donna did most of the presenting and did, as I say, an outstanding job. But we'll go through that process again each time we issue bonds and then report back to the board as to how the credit rating either stays the same or may adjust over time.
So we're looking at a budget this evening, and we have some concerns about meeting our obligations. Talk about, for a minute, the impact when we go to ratings if we were to not be able to right the ship in terms of the ability to meet our obligations. What is the impact in the rating agency?
Yeah, no, Dr. Kimball, that's a very good question. So we, I think, scored a point with the credit rating agencies because of the fact that the board had taken some actions to make budget reductions, pleasant as they may be, and was contemplating taking additional budget steps to reduce the budget. So the rating agencies liked that. They liked the fact that the district had been proactive. They liked the fact that the board had made those decisions and that there were additional budget cuts that were being contemplated. I would say if we did not make them, we probably would have to explain that to the rating folks. I think they were viewing that as a positive factor. They do, even though the community is responsible for repaying the bonds, right, the taxpayers, the rating agencies do put a lot of emphasis on the finances of the local school district when assigning a rate. So they're looking at deficit spending, they're looking at structural deficits, they're looking at how school districts use one-time money, they're looking at reserve levels, they're looking at all of that. And so I think we're taking into account and complimenting the board for the actions taken and the actions that maybe you're thinking about taking. But that's something we'll have to address one way or the other the next time we go with it. My pleasure. Thank you very much. Thanks everyone for letting me be here. We look forward to seeing you next time. Sure.
Tim, you have consistently led us with great judgment and with great character. We appreciate you. You've been by our side since we envisioned this bond, and so far, so good.
Oh,
Appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you for those kind words. Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, consent calendar. We have some items to be pulled. Okay, 11C, 14A, 14B, 15N, and we pulled 15, oh, okay, never mind, 15 is gone. 15S, 15T, U, B, 15AA, and 15JJ.
Okay, so can I read that back to you to make sure we get the record correctly, if you don't mind? I believe we have 11C, 14A, 14B, 15N like Nancy, 15S like Sam, 15T like Tom, 15U, 15V like Violet, 15AA, and 15JJ. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. And do I have a motion to approve the rest of the consent calendar?
I make a motion to approve the rest of the consent calendar.
I'm second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, so the first one was 11C. Cipriano, did you want to talk to that, or no?
No, not me.
Okay, so I have a question about the new hires. I thought we were in a freeze. I'm just kind of curious. I know we had, I don't know, I know we have people retired, but when I looked at the register and I was like, oh my goodness, we're hiring all these teachers back or new teachers, and I thought we were going to use the ones that we didn't have working with students now and put them back in the positions. So I was very confused when I saw this.
So the positions that are listed here are all based on the projections for next school year. So even though we had retirements in our school district, we did the early retirement incentive, we still had a need after we moved the teachers around that you indicated for us to move earlier in the winter. We still have a need to hire teachers and to fill in positions. So every site, for example, has an allocation, and we're going by the allocation that has been given to the department per site and department. So if Beauvilliers Elementary School, for example, needs 22 teachers, they're getting 22 teachers based on projections that were lowered by 600 and some students.
Yes, 614.
614 for next year. So all the positions that you indicated for us to move back, I think it was in February, Donna? Those positions, we moved all those teachers back into classroom assignments from the ones that you indicated in that
Are we hiring more teachers? Are there more teachers other than what's on here? I'm really confused. We're in a budget deficit spending. We're hiring teachers and other people. I thought we were like scrambling to find $19+ million, and this is the week that we're supposed to look at the budget and all of that. So why are we hiring when we are trying to make cuts?
You still need to have X number of teachers to match your students. You have a ratio that you have to maintain based on the class size in the agreements. So based on that, for example, we have a 24:1 ratio. For example, at elementary, you have to maintain that by contract, and therefore we staff sites based on projections that you're given and the staffing allocations. So no site, other than the ones that you're aware of, have received extra personnel. But again, if Bovier needs 22 teachers for their school, they're going to have 22 teachers next year because we have to maintain the class size ratios through the CBAs.
Can we put a hold on hiring until we look at the budget?
From this point forward?
I'm sorry?
From this point forward?
Yes, from this point forward, until we look at the budget, can we put a hold on it? Is that something possible to do or no?
It's just that the school year, it could be the time would be so tight that the school year would begin before you had time to fill those positions. The concern is getting the work done over the summertime.
So, I think this is where my confusion is. We had talked about, we have a lot of cuts to make, a lot. There's no doubt everybody wants FTEs, people in APs, people need this program, we need bus drivers, we need all this stuff. So we have teachers out of the classroom. So if we have to revisit that and say it's gonna save us money to get rid of some of those programs that the teachers are out of the classrooms for temporarily, put them back in the classrooms to work through with this budget mess, then that's what we need to do. We don't need to hire more people into this district. We have enough teachers around, and I know that's gonna be an emotional thing. Oh, we can't do this, we can't do that, but Linda, we have to cut a lot of money, and it has to come, and it seems like every place that we say we need to do that, we get pushback from.
So the issue here is credentialing. So Elaine, I know we've considered who's out of class at this time and who could potentially be booked back, and so we certainly understand that interest on the part of the board. The problem is that a lot of these positions don't have a sitting person out of class that can fill them, and they are required to be filled in the fall. And so I don't know if you want to speak to that.
I see Casita, that would just be a multiple subject. We have all those teachers out of the class with multiple subjects. If I go all the way down here, you got grapevine. You know, these are multiple subjects. We have a lot of teachers out of the classroom.
I would like to make a comment. We technically we reduced 67.2 FTE, full-time equivalents of certificated teaching staff, not management, not classified, that is just teachers. 67.2, we reduced the FTE from 2018-19 to 2019-20.
We have 67 less teachers.
Yes, we do.
But we're still hiring all these.
But those are counted within that difference. Next year, we're gonna have 1,212.6 full-time equivalent teaching positions certificated, and that's inclusive of these people here.
Okay.
We've got a lot of resignations.
So let me follow up on this, because as you know, I'm figuring all this out. We have a budget, we have to cut. So from tonight on, can we say no more hiring until the board, it comes before the board first to say we want to put people here. Are we allowed to do that, freeze hiring, the board freeze hiring and say no more hiring? We're not doing this, we're not bringing anybody else on until we fix what we need to do in this district.
You can you can freeze things that are not attached to students. So if we know there is nobody in our district to fill a spot, and we know we're going to need it, we have to go about the work of filling it. You can't freeze anything that's outside of a classroom and kids, and that has students attached. You can absolutely wait. Things like people that work directly with special needs students or classes that require a certain credential for which there's nobody waiting in the wings that has that credential. Those are where we need to get busy and get those filled. You want to add to that?
I'm not talking about the special ed teachers that we're going to need. Yes, absolutely, we need them. I'm talking about our classroom teachers. Right now, if you go down this list, there's a lot of teachers here. There's a lot of music teachers here too, which at this point in time, I kind of question hiring that many music teachers. And so that's what I want to do. I've been here many, many years, and I know how this works. So we need to stop it right here and now until we make things right and we do right sizes. If it's a special ed person we need with a special credential, absolutely, Rebecca, bring them in, we need them. But not just for our general ed classrooms.
The direction from the board, or is, I don't know, I'm just asking.
Well, I'm just thinking that if we have a ratio that's required by the state, we have to fill that void.
The ratio is required by collective bargaining.
I don't know how to, you can't curtail that, you can't, it has to be filled. And although it does seem like it adds on to what we have to cut collectively as a board, I just don't see how we can circumvent that.
I think the other concern, if we don't move now and we hold hiring, is one of the things that happens is I think Elaine can attest to this, we're experiencing a teacher shortage now. And so what happens is if you begin to need to hire teachers in mid or late August, you find that you get folks that aren't as qualified, who don't have the appropriate either background or support. And often, there's an old cliche amongst us principals that if you didn't hire in June, you didn't get the pick of the litter because you just didn't get the folks that were available. If we freeze jobs, they'll become pretty clear, and then people will go elsewhere and not come to this.
I think that hiring teachers for sites is very important, of course. We do need to staff our sites with teachers. But having luxury music teachers is not a necessity right now. After hearing what teachers came up and told us about reading levels, I think that we need to rethink about what our priorities are when we have students entering 9th grade that are not reading at grade level. We tore the LCAP apart to fix the budget. Now we have to tear the budget apart to educate the students in this district. So whatever it takes to do that, that's what we need to do.
And I understand the laws that we have to have teachers in there, but we have a lot of teachers we're paying teacher salaries that aren't working with kids. We need to get them back in kids before we bring new people onto this district or until we win the lottery and have a lot of money to pay for them all.
When I arrived in this district, we were experiencing a daily significant substitute teacher shortage that had to be addressed. And so part of our means of addressing that was to create, rather than removing teachers for a full day with a substitute from class for professional development and collaboration, we instituted something called a wheel. And that provides students with a variety of activities that are different than what they expect to have in the classroom, but releases teachers for collaboration. And it's been something that the elementary schools have used repeatedly and significantly for conversations around literacy and things like that for teachers that are released for that purpose. So when we hire music teachers, it's not a standalone music program. Those are people contributing to a wheel program typically that is allowing for collaboration, for addressing the issues that were brought up by our teachers earlier. So remember that if we choose not to rehire for our wheel, we have to really think about how we're going to deliver professional development and deal with the substitute shortages. And surely the wheel is something we need to talk about and address, but simply not filling those positions leaves us with a wheel frame and no people in which to fill it.
The wheel is a luxury. Students learning to read is not a luxury. It's something that we have to give them. And so I don't think the wheel should be important right now. I think we need to move away from that and go back to giving all of the teachers all the time they can with their students so that we can teach them to read, write, and do math at grade level before they leave that grade level. And having that collaboration time is important, but I think it takes away from the student's time in the classroom with the teacher.
Anybody want to make a motion?
I make a motion that we don't do any more hiring for anything that's a luxury item, such as a music teacher, a wheel, or anything outside of the ordinary classroom. Anything that is a credentialed teacher in the classroom, FTEs that are needed on sites only.
So I appreciate that. That is not agendized, so I think at this point, with due respect to what you're trying to do, at this point, you need to handle the item that's on the floor. And then when we're discussing additional items, we can agendize. If somebody can call me if they think I'm incorrect on this, but I think we need to agendize where you're headed with the change in policy.
Dr. Kimball, I have a question as a follow-up. So currently with all the new hires, they're coming back. So they ultimately come back for us for approval, right? So even if there is a contract offer, they still need to be approved by the board of trustees, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
So we have an item on the floor, can we vote on this item?
I make a motion to approve the new hired and reinstated teachers.
Second.
Need item 11C.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I don't know.
Who seconded?
I did.
I just
Was
voted
it
aye.
a 3-1? Oh, Cipriano, what did you vote?
I voted for it, yes. Aye.
Yeah, 4-1. Single site plans, I have some questions that came to me after some conversations. Who writes the single site plans? Linda?
The school site, Dr. Seitz, would you talk about that for a moment?
Okay, and does the district ever tell them what they need to put into their school site plan or direct them to write things into their plan or certain programs into their plan?
Not programs, but we definitely direct them to address your Title I, address your title needs, and address different parts of the plan that need to be filled in. But
So
as far
if
as
you
getting
say
more-
address your Title I, do you tell them how to address that Title I?
No, they have ample experience in using Title I. They will ask what are allowable expenses and what are unallowable expenses. They may ask, can I use my Title I for after school such and such? And then we'll direct, well, absolutely you can use it for that, you could write for that. If they wanted to buy a certain program that was above and beyond, we would say, yeah, you can use it for that. So we kind of check sometimes we have to call the county and make sure things are clear, but
So once things are in a site plan, and then that site comes forward and says, okay, now I need to purchase this for my site plan, are we approving that?
absolutely. That's the check and balance that I actually have at my desk. When a request comes through that is coded with the title code, the number, I pull up a document that shows their site plans. I check it, I look at it and see if it's in their site plan. Say someone wants to do a Leader in Me conference, that's a common one. I'll look at the site plan, see if the site plan's been approved. And if it's been approved by the board, I'll look to make sure it's in their site plan. And I'll remind them that they're gonna have to evaluate this for next year.
Okay, and they're in your office, so we can come up and,
Actually, we have a document we can share with you that has their site plans on it, and we actually that's exactly what I do.
okay, perfect. Thank you.
So you're telling me, or telling us that the principals have complete control over these site plans?
Well, the state has control over the site plans in the county and what goes inside of it. It's a very strict template, but they actually, you have the principal and their team decides how to put it in there wording-wise. Absolutely.
For what best meets their site?
That's the exact object of the single plan for student achievement.
So that the principals have complete control of what best meets their site for these plans.
But isn't the plan created with the school site council and the leadership team and such? So there's input from everyone at the site, parents as well, all the parent groups. So it's not something that the principal directs, they collaborate.
My concern was that it was the collaboration from the people at the sites as opposed to the top-down district saying, here's how you use it. So that's what I was just double checking since it was here again this month.
They look at the dashboard and how their school has performed and trends, and then they try to address deficiencies or areas of concern, correct?
The concern you may have heard is that we went to a new template. So the district did a lot of hand holding on how to fill out that template. So we did a lot of, that doesn't go here, it goes over here. But we don't have the time or the knowledge of the school site to tell them, this is the program you need to put here. The sites come up with that. And a lot of that's been according to what their branding has been. And a lot of it coincides with their branding. Absolutely.
Well, thank you for clarifying. Any other questions?
I move to approve 14A.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're good. 14B.
That's the out-of-state travel.
I pulled that one too. Sorry, this was everything kind of came to us at the last minute and was a busy week for me, so I didn't get these. So out-of-state travel. I thought back, we were told we were stopping out-of-state travel, and now we're back.
We comb every single item, and anything that is at all considered optional, we do not approve. So if you see these on there, they are either International Baccalaureate, they are AP, they are business, certificate required. They are, one of them is League of Innovative Schools, which is a mandatory conference. We could choose not to be part of the league, but if we are part of the league, we must attend that conference. None of them are, we feel like going. And believe me, Chris, I pulled this about 4 times. She was like, can I just print it? But we were scrutinizing every single one.
I make a motion to approve 14B.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Was that 5?
That is fine. Okay, now I think we've got 15 and N.
Oh, I'm sorry. Please actions.
A lot of 15s, right? I might have to just go up.
I know, 15N.
Yeah, it's 5.
It's the ratification of award for lease lease.
I wanted explanation as to what that was.
Okay. Lease-leaseback is a delivery methodology on how to build and construct schools. What it is basically the district works with a general contractor. We go out, we have a very formal process that we have to go out and bid for. We advertise and things of that sort. We evaluate their responses, and then they award. The primary purpose is for them to start early in the pre-construction phase, so they can work with the architect and the school site to make sure that that project's being done on time and within budget. Once all the plans are done and drawing, then there comes an opportunity where the contractor who knows the project and has gone through DSA will give us a guaranteed maximum price. That guarantee says, I'm going to build this project. You have to approve it after we get the design documents back. And then they give us a guaranteed maximum price, and they'll go out and build it. And that's what a lease-leaseback is. Now, some of those, I think I even mentioned to you on one of the board meetings that on lease-leaseback, what we don't know yet, and that'll be decided in September, is whether or not we're going to have a project labor agreement. Doesn't preclude a contractor from doing it that way, but when they come up with the guaranteed maximum price, those will be factored in. Right now, what they're doing is giving us the price for the pre-construction work that has to be done so that we can get started on all these projects.
make a motion to approve 15N.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Can we do this next? Okay, 15S.
Yeah.
I pulled 15S because I have some questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Change orders. How are these change orders? I understand how the whole concept works. A person bids on something and then they get there and they find out there's a change order because somebody wanted vinyl flooring instead of carpet. So who decides or who allows the people to make the change orders or decide between carpet and vinyl?
Well, one, we meet with the school prior to, but this particular case on this change order for the carpet, Ed Enrichment requested the district, they don't like carpet in their rooms, and they've been using the rooms from us for their preschool programs. They said, I have money, if I'm willing to pay whatever the quotes are that we got from the contractor, would we be able to do a change order and add the vinyl material that we need for our classroom to meet our requirements for our preschool program? So we said, yes, here's the quote. Robin Layton, the president, came back and said, yes, and that is where you got on S, the $11,264.56. No impact to the district because Ed Enrichment is paying for it all.
That's the $1.2 million grant.
With other repairs at the preschools, are we responsible for them? For
No.
the structures there?
When they do the repairs for their own program, they do them themselves. We're not responsible. A lot of times they'll pay for us to do the work with our skilled crews that we have in our maintenance department, but they always reimburse us for it.
I make a motion to approve 15S.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now we go to 15T.
I pulled that one as well because I have some questions about taking bids and, so Dr. Kimber, do we authorize you to award bids? Is there a dollar amount that you can't go over or a dollar amount that you go under? Or how does that work when you're authorized to award bids?
Yes, there is. Donna's gonna tell you all the
Okay.
specifics.
Okay, so she's a little bit wrong, and I hate to do that to you on my last day. Don't fire me. No,
You got one day left, what am I gonna do?
So, I have longevity. Technically, there is been formal bid limits and things of that sort, and we're governed. We guys 2 years ago approved the California Uniform Cost Accounting Act, and it sets certain limits. These were all done by formal bid. When you gave authorization in May for the superintendent to award, there was no limits. So we have the projects that we know that we've got going on. We have budgets that have been established as part of the capital improvement program, and the budgets are in there, and they have to be within those budgets. So a recommendation is made by the entire team. We give it to Dr. Kimball. She reviews. We make sure that it's good, because one of them you're going to come up to, we had to reject it, which was the gym expansion at RBV, because we didn't get any good bids. We said, we ain't going to do that. So we had her formally reject it, but that's what those are. You're going to ratify it, because she went ahead and approved it, so we can get the work started. And they're like halfway done on VAPA right now.
I wasn't totally clear in your question, so, but each item does have a bid limit, as, you know,
My authority is one thing, and
my authority is one thing and the bid limit process is another, so what was the question?
So I hope I
Is there a
answered.
dollar amount that you can't go over that?
as the superintendent.
No, it was not specified in the board item.
So the architect decides how much a job will be. It goes out to bid, am I correct?
It does.
Do we have a consultant that takes those bids for us, or do we take the bids and do all of the calculations as to what bid is meeting the architect?
So it's a combination of two things. We use a construction management firm. to help us with that process. Erickson Hall is the company that is providing us assistance on the 4 shovel-ready projects for Measure LL. I want to say Prop O, I'm going, wait a minute, that's wrong. Measure LL to get us started. They help us, but everything is done through the district. We make up the recommendation, and our team works with the architect and the construction manager to stay on time and within budget, and to deliver it just as we have specified.
Who is our firm again?
This particular one for the 4 firms that we're talking about is Erickson Hall.
Which is not to be confused with Eric Hall and Associates.
2 different.
Very confusing.
Are they related?
No, not at all.
Just asking.
I don't know if this belongs here or not, but Erickson Hall, we approved to pay him, what, $158,000 to oversee that bond?
No, that's Eric Hall. And that was done in May.
Never mind.
I'm sorry.
Very confusing.
I tell him to change their name, but he's had it for a long time.
So what is Colby Technologies?
Colby Technologies is a software package that produces the software that we're going to use for our bond accounting. It's because we have certain reports that we have to provide to the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee and you, the board, and we have to track all these costs, because if we ever get to the point where the state has money in the state bond, we're going to submit for reimbursement, and it has to be done in a certain manner. And this software allows us to do it. Colby software also helps us in our pre-qualification process. The state has certain guidelines for every contractor when we do projects over $1 million. They have to be pre-qualified. This software allows the contractor to go in and input all the information that is necessary, their safety plan, all the projects they do, and then based on their financial statement, we'll rate them on what level they can bid on. Some companies can bid as high as $100 million projects. Some companies are very small and they can only bid maybe on $200,000 worth of projects. That's their limit. So by qualifying, that allows us to know which companies can be used where. But the software does both of those.
So are you considered the person who oversees all of this? The CBO oversees it, such as a project manager for the bond?
Okay, so we have several different layers of oversight. Yes, the CBO is going to be ultimately responsible for the capital improvement program and the delivery of Measure LL and the accomplishment of all the projects. We do have the executive director of facilities, the director of construction, who are also going to be working intimately on every single one of the projects. Because we still have work outside of those within the district, day in, day out repairs and things of that sort that has to go on. And then we hired, like Ms. Smithfield referenced in May, Eric Hall and Associates to do the things with the California Department of Ed, to do the California Environmental Quality Act requirements, to do the Office of Public School Construction related activities, to help us to schedule out everything to make sure we're targeting, and also to help us when we start analyzing when the next issuance of bonds are going to be needed for our cash flow purposes. Because those are going to be really important components, because I have heard the board mention, at last I think it was Mr. Vargas who actually mentioned it, maybe we have to redo the phases of the projects, okay? Well, that's going to require us to analyze our cash flow. When are we going to be able to sell the bonds so that we can actually do construction? Because there's some pretty large projects out there, Vista High, Rancho Buena Vista, that are out there that are going to take large sums of money. And you got to make sure that you got to get the planning done, get DSA approval, and make sure you have enough cash afterwards. So with all the schools getting something, that cash flow is going to become an important component. And with the CBO and the bond account, they're going to be working on all those. So there's lots of people that are all part of the process, but ultimately the CBO will be the one who's being held accountable for the delivery of the program.
Thank you.
We're on 15.
Yeah, we're on 15T.
I make a motion to approve 15T.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
You?
Yes, I told you because you just said something about, I told you because I don't feel, in my opinion, that this is something that needs to take place right now at Mission Vista. I think we have other schools that are more needy, and you just touched on why we have to do it a certain way. So
Yeah.
I make a motion to approve 15U.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Yes.
Yep, aye.
Okay. I was kidding, Seb. Okay. B.
15B, that's a rejection.
Yes.
What happens if, the bids come in and they're always over? Does the architect go back through and look at the project to see?
Oh, the whole team goes back and looks at it, because sometimes we end up interviewing, if we do get one bid, we'll ask the contractor, can you share with us what were the big ticket items? And then we go back and look, and maybe we need to do some value engineering, maybe our specifications were too high. What is it that made this difficulty? Right now, going out to bid in certain periods of time, because contractors are already busy for the summer, they don't need the work, so therefore they're not as competitive. So learning the timing of the market comes into play. But well, they go back and we go out and rebid it again.
Dr. Kimball, has there been any times where you have awarded people bids without going through the process?
If it fell under the bid limit, not here, I don't think.
No, not here.
So that's not something you typically do?
No.
No, the only time she can award bids now is in the period that you specify, from after the May board meeting until right before the August board meeting. So that's the only time she can do that. She does not have authority otherwise. That's your responsibility.
We are very careful about these rules.
I make a motion to approve 15B.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 15AA. Oh, Linda, I need you to explain this. Yeah, and it was really just explained to me, so we're taking money from other people are gonna give us, never mind, you explain it to me. This is the work, this is for, this piggyback contract on AA is for a piggyback for the music sound system for the Rancho Buena Vista band room. Dr. Kimball has, we're in the process of repainting it and redoing the floor over at the band room. But the one other thing that was required is a sound acoustical system, because the students, when they're practicing their music, the room that they're currently in, what I hear, it sounds terrible. And so this sound system amplifies the sound, so it's similar to what they do and they experience when they're actually performing in other venues.
But it's also intended to be moved to the new band room once it's constructed, so this is really something they're purchasing in advance of the construction of their ultimate facility. They have a huge band in a small room and they're trying to make ends meet, so the purpose of this is to get them the sound system and then move it later.
So this is just for R&B? Correct. Sorry.
I make a motion to approve 15AA.
All in favor?
Second.
Second. Martha second. Martha did. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? No. Okay, thank you. This is another one from our friends at Ed Enrichment. They wanted to get Foothill Oaks room done the same way as they did Bouvier's. There's two different contracts, so they're paying for it, no cost.
I make a motion to approve JJ.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
I think we still have to approve the consent calendar, no? Or did we do this?
We did do that.
We did, okay. And I'm gonna ask you to take a quick short break.
Yeah, couple, 5, 6, 7 minute break.
Perfect, thanks.
Let's keep it running.
Are you dog? Hi, Sue. Oh. Well, especially department chairs.
That's what I mean. I meant the You took the same thing.
Well, I'm wearing heels.
It's a lot of reasons.
Wasn't sure how you would do it, so I didn't want to do it. And I didn't know if my space
I'm here. We can hear you fine.
All right, perfect. Back online.
There you go. How are you? I've been working all along.
Okay, 16, approve employment agreement for Rachel D'Ambroso for Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources effective July 1st, 2019. I make a motion to approve Rachel D'Ambroso for Assistant Superintendent of Human Relations effective July 1st.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
We're shaking your hand.
Congratulations. Air hug.
B is adopt the VUSD blueprint for educational excellence and innovation for the 1920 school year.
So I don't have a presentation, I'm just here to ask questions, answer questions.
I think that we need to, right, move in second, open that for discussion, yes?
We can ask questions, is that what you said?
I think we need to open the item so you can discuss it.
Yeah, yeah. There's no
So we need to move in
presentation.
seconds.
I make a motion to approve the LCAP for 2019-20.
Second.
My question is on, in the new book that we all have,
Okay. Financial version?
on the long version,
Okay. What page?
on page 19 of 84, strategy 3, action plan step 1. I would like to know what these 46 FTEs are for TK-12.
These are counselors, so a chunk of them, I don't know the exact number, maybe Donna has it, are elementary and middle. The newest element of this is that we've added the high school counselors to this, and that's a new, well, yeah, but the high schools are the newest addition for this year. In previous years, this item had the elementary and middle school social emotional counselors. We added a large chunk, I want to say over 20 of our high school counselors.
All counseling positions, except for special ed counseling, is in this item.
And that's why it went up so dramatically.
Okay, so that's all of them is except for the ones that are in special ed.
Correct.
Correct.
Like
Okay,
the
so-
EARNs, like the EARNs mental health
Okay,
counselors.
right. So there's 46 of them,
Mhm.
and I noticed the amount is $4 million. I'm just wondering why the difference between the 8-period schedule, 46 FTEs at 5.1, and these 46 FTEs at $4 million.
So that would be a Donna question.
It's based on actual salary information. When we give the estimate, we took what all the salaries are for the counseling staff, and they may start at, various different, ranges in this teacher salary schedule. It's based on actual information.
And class sizes, right?
Huh?
Class sizes too.
Well, no. Counselors don't have anything to do with class sizes or anything of that sort. But this is based on what their actual salaries are.
Don't our counselors work additional days as well?
Some do if the sites pay for it, but that isn't included in the number.
So I think she's asking.
I know what she's asking.
46 counselors only cost this much. Why do 46 high school teachers cost millions more? And we can't say it's the credential because they could be new teachers and lower end on the pay scale.
And you're really true. However, we have to use, when we budget for new positions, the average teacher cost. The average teacher cost is $116,400. That is the average cost of the teacher. So when you multiply that times 48, you're getting to the $5.6 million for the 40, which is what we feel is necessary for the 8-period day. Now, during the planning process, as they go through the planning process, that may change. All we did was based on the initial estimate. That is what we're showing in the budget, in the multi-year projection for the 8-period day. It could be refined, but I'm just telling you that's what's in the budget for right now.
So what is the average cost of an FTE?
For a teaching position, $116,400. That includes the base salary and all statutory benefits, plus health and welfare.
So that's $86,000 plus the benefits?
And the health and welfare, yes ma'am.
And how much does a average counselor make?
I do not know that off the top of my
I
head.
think they're on the same salary scale as the teachers are, so well, there you go.
When you do the scattergrams for teaching staff,
we have a lot of, the average goes up because we have a lot of teachers down towards the bottom. So when you're, believe it or not, you still have quite a bit. So when we're doing that analysis and we have to come up year after year on the average cost, which we do in October, and so Amy, when she comes back in October, she'll have a new average cost of the teacher. But right now, based on current information, it's $160,400. That's what we used for the basis of the analysis.
So I'm still not understanding how it's different for a counselor.
It may not be, but we don't have as many counselors in the bottom part of the scale. So that their costs, so they're up in the upper part of the scale. We have a lot more newer counselors than teachers that are driving the average cost higher because they're further down on the salary schedule.
So for 8-period schedule, you're not going to be hiring new teachers?
You
You're
can't
going
make
to be...
that assumption, because what if a teacher wants to be a part of that 8-period schedule and they have longevity in the district, they have 25 years, they are gonna put in requests to be a part of that program, because maybe they're excited about it. So they're gonna want to be there, and so that way, you always use the average.
So you can't assume that with
No, ma'am.
counselors? You said you can't make those assumptions with teachers because you might have a teacher that's further along on the scale, but you may have counselors that come that are
I
further.
believe that I used actual salary and I rounded up to the nearest,
These are
the nearest
actual
whole for me.
calculations.
Those are actual costs based on their step advancement and things of that sort.
Right, so chances are, a good chance is, that many teachers for the 8-period day at that time, even with the declining enrollment, which we probably wouldn't need that, is not gonna cost $5 or $6 million.
You have to have, we're conservative, okay? We are conservative, and we always estimate high on expenses, and you estimate low on revenues. So yes, it could be better numbers, but you won't know until you start doing the deep dive. And you won't know until we get more information from the 8-period planning group on what it looks like. We can only go based on what we know at a particular point in time.
So is the $5.1 million for 8-period schedule for all 4 grades, 9 through 12?
Yes, ma'am.
Because the report that we got was only for 9th and 10th grade, and it was just
understand.
a little under $2 million. And it seems that it keeps increasing, and so when I saw this in the LCAP, I was really baffled as to what's going on.
Okay, so with that plan, again, I heard it mentioned, but we don't know what the final result's gonna be. So we have, like I said, we go conservative, we aim high. And that's what we did. Because we have to make an assumption that it's gonna be fully occupied. Again, the planning committee will come back and they will make recommendations, and from there, you will develop a budget and approve a budget that, because you've already committed to doing this, that will incorporate that.
There's another factor to consider in this, is that as the high schools try to develop other elective classes, the likelihood is some of our English teachers might want to teach an English class that's a core class, an elective American Lit, Shakespeare, and whatever it might be. They will come up with things. There will be some efforts to have new electives available, but when that happens, I think the idea that we're only going to go an 8-period day with 9th and 10th graders is a little bit naive, because part of the reason for doing this, part of the committee's group, was to offer the kids who have an impacted schedule, who are IB, AP kids, to have another class for them to take. I think it would be a real challenge to say to a parent of an 11th grader IB student, hey, we're not going to let you, you're only going to get to take 6 classes, you don't get to take that elective that's Shakespeare, and whatever it might be. I'm just making up something. And so I think we need to be careful that while that might be a way to look at that, you've got 11th graders, the first year it's implemented, and seniors who may want to take, and at least in 1 additional class, maybe 2, and those impact the schedule and the number of staff you need to do that. So just a caution as we look at that. I as a principal, put a period into my day once doing that, and it's pretty challenging to do. So and develop a schedule that way. You need to really plan thoroughly to make sure you can cover all those class sections for kids.
So basically, it's just, again, a transparency thing, because it looks like, okay, for this, we want to bring the counselors over, and it's only gonna cost us this much. But for here, over here, this is just way too much that we can't take on this right now, we're not gonna figure out the way, which is how it was perceived. So, okay, we'll go ahead with the counselor.
I just want to make sure that the board is clear that, actually, this is not where we are on the agenda, but we are committed to the board's commitment to the 8th period day, and we're not trying to stop it. So please know, we are here in support of that work, and we will be moving forward.
The 8th period day is in the LCAP, so you're well within your rights to talk about the 8th period day. Not that particular item, but the 8th period day is in the LCAP.
The implementation
Correct.
just started.
Yes, so you can talk about it.
I'd like to read something that is a letter. It says Vista Unified School District Community, and it's in the budget packet, and it talks about the LCAP, so it falls under what you're doing. And it says our primary goals in implementing the blueprint are to ensure improve literacy and mathematics achievement, and to accelerate the reclassification rates of our English learners. Is everything in the LCAP doing that?
No.
How can we fix it?
Well, I mean, you're the board, so you give us direction about what we do with the LCAP. It is important to note that part of the LCAP process, as I've talked many times with you about, is to address the feedback from the community. So as we go through and identify actions and services, those actions and services should represent the feedback that you've had from the community as well. So we have had feedback from the community in a variety of other areas, not just those key areas, which you're correct in, literacy, numeracy, and language acquisition from the state of California is the primary purpose of the LCAP. But there are other purposes. I'll give you one salient example. You heard someone talk tonight about it, and that is family engagement. So parent liaisons is another example that isn't directly focused on literacy, numeracy, and language, but a really important element of it, and frankly, a requirement in the state of California. So there are other requirements, but I don't want to deny the fact that your point is exactly correct. Literacy, numeracy, and language are the three #1 areas of focus from the state of California for the local control accountability plan. That's an accurate statement.
So, back to the stakeholders and getting the input
Yes.
from the community. At our last meeting, I specifically said, or I put it in our questions on our matrix, what stakeholder groups came up with certain ideas on in our LCAP, and my answer was it was pretty much top down, so it wasn't from stakeholders. In fact, stakeholders had actually requested the exact opposite of what we were being asked to do. So you say it's supposed to be stakeholders, but then I know, sitting here from our last meeting, it's not. Do I go back and read it again, all the stakeholders' input, and then come back and say, we need to do this and this and this, or?
But I think the board is the ultimate check on whether we as an organization got right the actions and services you believe the community needs to address literacy, numeracy, language, and other elements of it. The process for the development of the LCAP originates with the stakeholders. We then define actions, themes within that feedback. As you know, there's more than 60 pages of feedback. And then those themes go to a Blueprint Construction Network team composed of representatives from our community. They make recommendations to the cabinet. And I think what you're referring to is ultimately the cabinet and the cabinet's team, each department, develop the actions and services. So the ultimate writing of the actions and services, you're correct, is written by the cabinet and the cabinet's team. And so I think what you're saying is there might be a disconnect between what the public is telling you in terms of their needs and what the actions and services ultimately identify.
Okay, I'll just pull out an example. You're right. I believe what I read, every single stakeholder group in this whole entire district, except for one, said our impacted elementary schools all need their own AP. Without a doubt, kids are being negatively affected without that help. The principals cannot do it because it's too much.
That's accurate.
It
That
is
was
a
the
fact.
theme. That was
It
the
is
theme.
not an
Yep.
opinion, it is a fact. So if every single stakeholder group or every single stakeholder group came and said to bring them back, and the first report you bought us, what was it?
It did not have them.
We were gonna cut 6,
Correct.
okay? So then we came back and said, well, hire 2 more back and we'll split them. That is still not okay. Everybody sees the need for them. So if every group says that, how is it then that one other group can say, nope, that's not important, when we all know, and I know I shouldn't be, well, yeah, you're ahead of the LCAP, so yes, I am addressing this.
That's okay, I understand. And again, the direction from the board at our meeting last week was to add 2 additional assistant principals, for which we did. Again, this is the board's decision at the direction of the superintendent and the cabinet. We understand, the passion, and I don't want to deny the fact that it was a theme across multiple stakeholder groups, that elementary schools, in particular, I'll be specific about this because the theme was pretty specific, in particular at the highest impact schools. And the highest impact schools aren't always defined by the number of students at the school. I want to point that out. So that was the theme. So I don't want to deny that theme because it's actually on our website. Anyone could look it up. So the role for me and the other team is to take direction from the board and the superintendent and make adjustments to our LCAP, for which we've done based on the direction that we got last week. If direction changes tonight, then we will move forward and make those adjustments as well.
I would just say, the last year we have done a lot of balancing of resources and trying to determine, sometimes correctly and sometimes, perhaps, made decisions that the community questioned. Trying to do our best with the limited resources that we had, and we'll be entering another phase of determining again next steps of how do we take the resources that we have, reduce them by quite a number of $1 million, and do our best by kids. And so those are the conversations we have, and the things we need to wrestle about, and whether someone was right or wrong in that decision, I rest assured that conversation's coming up again, I'm sure, as we talk about the budget. And so if it needs to be righted, then we will do that.
I understand that when we come back, or actually starting in July, we as a board will be looking at a potential of $10 million more in cuts, give or take $1 million. Will those cuts, they have to be taken from the 1920 budget, or is that for the next?
2021.
Okay.
And I
So
believe
then-
it's more than 10 million. if I'm not
It's
mistaken.
19.1, but that will be
Right.
adjusted once we get the special ed allocation from the state. We just don't know what those numbers are. I gave you guesstimates on the 20th meeting, so it's probably gonna go down to about 11 million is what it's going to be at the end of the day. But we will not have that until sometime in July, because the state is going through and looking at the preschool students for special ed that have IEPs and give services. So until that time, we don't know what additional money is gonna be coming. So what you're approving tonight is $19.1 million in cuts. I mean, you're
No,
approving
you're
the
telling-
budget resolution.
The
to do-
resolution that we will get to work.
Yes, exactly.
Get to work, so we'll have to, when the LCAP for the following year is created,
Correct.
we'll have to prioritize and, decide what's more important. And for sure, we need to think about the vice principals, but I mean, I feel like at this point, we have gone over this LCAP many, many times with staff and cabinet. And we have a plan for next year. And I just don't feel that it's appropriate right now to try to rip it up right now, because we spent all last Thursday doing that. Compromising, going back and forth, looking at what we can reduce, what was something that we could accept as a cut or a deletion. So this money thing obviously is stressful, it's on our mind, it's a heavy weight, but I don't see us taking the work of the LCAP and all the input of most of the stakeholders or all the stakeholders and tearing it apart. Yes, I do agree that everyone wanted vice principals except for one group, but at least we brought back 2 to share at 4 sites, and that's progress, I think.
Dr. Doyle, I have a couple of comments or questions.
Go ahead.
And so my first question is, we could come back and, you know, this is based on our meeting, we can come back in August and revisit this if needed, and if we need to make amendments. Can you explain that process to the board and members of the community?
Sure. So the LCAP process is pretty deliberate and straightforward. So the simple answer is the board, yes, can make an adjustment to the LCAP for the 1920 school year. The process would be that we would have to go back through and do an abbreviated community engagement process to get their feedback, because technically that's what you have to do through statute. It doesn't have to take a long time, but we would have to go through that process. I would guess about a 2-month process. And then at the end of that process, then we would cull together the Blueprint Construction Network, give you the feedback from them, and then the board through the superintendent would make an adjustment to the LCAP. So it can be done. And as a matter of fact, we've done it before, about 3 years ago.
And then, thank you for that. And then my second comment is, I know that we're gonna start early and trying to work on these, whether it's 19 million or 11.1 million.
Yes. And
so my comment is, let's not wait till the final deadline next year. This comment was, again, stated last year, but want to make sure it's on the record that we continue to engage this so that we can have fruitful conversations and identify what are the priorities and where can we cut in. So I know this is a big challenge ahead of us, but I want to make sure that members are going through this ongoing on a monthly basis, because we need to make sure that we do right by our students.
Correct.
The budget conversations will be launched in July, so your very next meeting, my friend, we will get into conversations about that.
So
Thank you.
everyone is, sorry, Cipriano, are you finished?
I'm good.
All right.
Ms. Morton, before you talk, I just wanted to do a follow-up to that for the board. And again, this is intended for the newer board members. So there's just a caution to the statement that Cipriano made, and that is that if we wanted to follow the letter of the LCAP requirements and law, any discussion about the budget as it relates to the LCAP for the 2020-2021 school year should first start with having conversations about what the district needs are and what the actions that we would identify to address those needs, as opposed to having a conversation about the budget and where we should cut and then talking about the needs. So if we had a conversation about budgets and then came up with a line item of items to cut, we would be out of compliance with the LCAP procedure. The procedure is supposed to start with, what is it that the board feels, based on the community, that the needs of the district are, and we from there we move into, now let's have a conversation about the prioritization of our budget. A very different philosophical approach than saying we need to cut X, Y, and Z. So it's just a caution to the team, because that's the technical legislative intent of LCAP.
Thank you for that clarification, and just, I'm happy to take that approach, and I know that President Smith will, is definitely something that she is looking forward to as far as identifying needs and going from that direction. Thanks.
So I want to follow up on something that Martha had talked about how we've talked about this. I don't feel we've talked about it enough. Last year, Cipriano and myself were extremely vocal, and we had said that we needed to be kept up with both of these all year, which we have not until the last minute. We get this put in front of us. At the last minute, we get the budget put in front of us without even time to sit down individually and talk about it. So to say we're going to take the blueprint that our district runs on for our needs for our students, which is what our jobs are, to me, it can't be discussed enough. And the fact that both Cipriano and I had asked for both of those things this year, and neither one of those were carried out, is very concerning. So when people say, oh, next year we have to start early, that's kind of old, been asked, wasn't done. So, not okay. We have to be kept up with this, and if it's for what our students need, I do think we need to quickly go through this, because there are things in here that are, Martha, your words, luxuries, not necessities. And we have to, Bill Faust said earlier, you know, you guys have to cut and make the cuts. Well, we're here to educate kids. And our needs are for those kids. We heard the high school teachers, oh my gosh, the kids aren't reading. What are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? Well, we're gonna do nothing because it's not in the LCAP. So that's how it seems like to me. We're not doing right by our children.
Once again, it feels like we are tearing apart the LCAP to fix the budget. So is there going to be budget items that we can take out to educate the kids with? Because we clearly need to do something about reading and math scores and ELD reclassification in this district. It is very, very upsetting to hear how low some of these kids are reading.
So again, starting at our next meeting, we'll be talking about, as Matt said, first of all, what are the needs of the district and what do we need to do to fill those needs, prioritizing, and then placing the money appropriately where it belongs. And this board has great interest in being involved in that process, and so you will be. And that will be the July meeting. We'll launch with a big conversation about dollars.
And to have APs at every site would be the best thing for all of our students. There's 8 music teachers at a tune of $880,000. So that amount of money could definitely be used to give every elementary site an AP.
All in favor of adopting the LCAP?
Aye.
We did, aye.
No.
No.
3 yes.
Cipriano, what was your response?
I'm voting aye in favor.
3 yes, 2 no.
I want to thank Dr. Doyle. That was LCAP is an amazingly heavy lift. It's a long, arduous process. He has been in meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting and done a beautiful job. I want to thank him for that.
And are you doing the federal addendum?
Yes, I'll answer any questions about the federal addendum. Just to catch you up on what it actually is. It's meant to supplement the LCAP. And it's basically to ensure that the LEAs have an opportunity to meet all of the provisions provided by ESSA, the Every Child Succeeds Act. So for us, we're a little bit ahead of this thanks to Dr. Doyle's work. A lot of places do not put all of their title funds or supplemental funds into the LCAP, and we do. So there's a lot of areas where they're asking us what's not in the LCAP, and they're asking the template's asking in Title I, everything that we use Title I for is in our LCAP. So a lot of this we're a little bit ahead of. But the CDE emphasizes that the LCAP federal addendum shouldn't drive your LCAP development, and the ESSA funds are supplemental to the state funds. So they're above and beyond. Just as the LCAP federal addendum supplements your LCAP. So it's extra for kids. And they encourage us to integrate the ESSA funds into our LCAP, and we have done an amazing job with that. So a lot of the funds you'll find in our section under Strategy 4, I believe it is actually Action and Service 5 or 6 that has all of our title and supplemental funds in there. LCAP federal addendum.
I make a motion to approve 17D.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
You're on E, adoption of the 2019-20 budget and approving resolution 1950. Yes.
Just a point of clarification, just to make sure so we don't go back. When they made a motion to approve 12B, was it 12B and C?
Yes.
I just wanted to make sure.
Yes, it's 12B and C because it was blueprint and LCAP.
I mean, 17B.
6, yeah.
Ms. Smithfield's motion was only for B, it wasn't for C.
But she said LCAP though. Her word was LCAP.
But it's item 17B.
It's not true, we need to vote.
Yeah, I think you need to vote
vote
then.
for item 17C, which is the LCAP. You voted for 17B, which is your blueprint. So you're halfway there, you need to vote for one more. Yeah, because the county would not accept this if it's not on the record. 17C.
I make a motion
I
to
move to
approve
approve
17C.
17B, blueprint for VUSD 2019-2020.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sorry about that.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for the clarification, Matt. We did the presentation on the budget and we've explained about the resolution. I can guarantee you that the numbers will change. Right now, the numbers are showing 19.1. That's what the resolution identifies. And I know with the starting in July, between the superintendent and the cabinet and Amy, you guys will be working on the budget and looking for the solutions, identifying needs, and then once the needs are identified, realigning budget to meet the needs, and which is the right way to do things. So with that, I would request respectfully that this item be approved.
Now, are we gonna be qualified?
If things are not done, a budget is not qualified, negative, or positive. It's just a submission of the budget. You don't get qualified, negative, or positive until you go to your internal reports. So if corrections aren't made, we would be qualified or negative.
I guess I'll rephrase my question. In your opinion, are we gonna be qualified?
Right now on paper, yes. If the board doesn't take appropriate action, but I trust your board. I think you guys are gonna do some things. I think you're gonna make some hard choices and going forward. I think all of you have that gumption and will to make it happen. So, I'm gonna take 1 minute right now because I'm not gonna see you guys again. It's been it has been a privilege for the last 11 years to, I'm trying not to cry. Thank you, I need that levity. It's been a privilege for the last 11 years to work in this district. You guys are amazing. The people in this district are amazing. You care about kids. You care about how to succeed. And I've been very fortunate to work here. I know we haven't always agreed. I'm too conservative and things of that sort, but I think all in all, we've done a good job. You guys have the hard lift going forward because it's not getting easier, and there's things that have to be adjusted with declining enrollment. And the state's trying to make attempts with the pension reform and having to make things correction, but unfortunately we're caught in the middle and we are trying to adjust. And I really believe that you guys have the heart to make the right choices for our students. And so with that, I thank you.
I have a question. I read something today that was very confusing to me, and you know my level. But somebody very publicly today posted that we cut our $12 million at our last meeting, or our February meeting, we came up with 12 million.
12.4.
And they insist that we've already hired 10 million. We've already bought back 10 million of those cuts. So instead of cutting what we said, 10 million of those cuts have already been restored
No.
into the district.
No,
Is that totally false?
that's totally false.
We haven't bought back any of those things.
No.
Thank you. That's what I thought, but I had to check because I'm like, where the heck did they get this from? So,
I
thank
don't
you.
know. That's totally misinformation.
And one more point of clarification, when it's regarding LCAP and budget, is it appropriate for me to talk about this right now?
Yeah.
So, those discussions about things, programs, positions that have to be cut, they have to be done publicly, correct?
Correct, and
So
there's a
we
process.
have no other choice but to do that, right? Because
Right.
that's our obligation.
Right, and there's a process, while you may cut funding for something, there's still a process that will be occurring because of Ed Code on layoffs and things of that sort, that will be coming forward in future board meetings, because just eliminating funding, if a person exists or a position exists, you have to take the next steps and take formal action, so.
But when we conduct business on a position, it must be by law in open session.
Correct.
Correct, thank you.
So if we adopt the budget for 1920 right now, and we want to make cuts in the 45-day window, do we make that into the motion?
Well, no, you can come back in July at the budget meeting and say, you've identified them, you get with the superintendent and you make those recommendations and say, and then if the whole board votes for it, yes, then that would be done, and then that could be incorporated in the August 45-day revision.
Or do we make some cuts now?
You can do that too, but they won't be incorporated until such time as in August, when we do the 45-day revision, when we get the additional revenue and know what's going to happen after the governor signs the budget, which he hasn't done yet.
And then one more question. I think this is budget. So we've got a few emails this past week or recently, and it says we have to come up with $19 million in cuts plus the 8-period day.
No, that's inclusive.
That's included.
That's
Thank you
inclusive.
for clarifying.
$19 million for 2021?
2021. Right now, the budget you're adopting is going to show that your deficit spending for 1920 about $4.8 million.
And as she said earlier, we know for sure that number is not gonna be exactly on, so
Right.
a little flex there.
That's a projection, and it will definitely change.
So within 45 days, because this is the first time I've done this with the budget, if I read the LCAP and I think that there's something that we just forgot and we need to address, then I would bring it to Linda within the month, and then she would bring it to my fellow trustees, and then we might be able to prioritize it and change it within 45 days.
As long as it's based on the needs of the district and based on community input and what they've given us, yes. Because we want to make sure the community, because the LCAP is just that, it's a community proclamation of what we need, so we want to make sure. And if it affects people, remember, positions have to go through a process.
Right.
Just because, you have to go through the formal layoff notice. And certificated staff, you have to wait until March before anything can be done, unless, of course, you have vacancies, and then you can move appropriately credentialed people into those spots.
In the budget, there shows a decrease from 1819 to 1920. Could you explain why there's a decrease in salaries? And I believe it's 100 or 1,000, 2,000.
Right, there's a decrease in salaries because of the fact that we have retirees that have been left. And so we've adjusted the salaries. Remember, I told you 67.2 certificated FTEs are less than what we had in 1819? Well, that would be a part of the salary decrease that would occur, because they're probably on the higher scale, and then, the ones that we hired back are on the lower scale, but that is part of the reason why the salaries are decreasing. And that would be our goal. That's what the SERP is supposed to do. Everybody good?
Cipriano, are you awake?
Did Donna mention we have $500 million in our reserve?
She was just about to do that. I wish, from your mouth to God's ear.
I know. Thank you, Donna.
Thank you.
I make a motion to adopt the 1920 budget
And approve.
And approve the resolution 1950 identifying the need for budget reduction for the 2021 fiscal year.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
No.
Thank you all. Get that, Chris? 1 no and 4 yes. Okay, moving along. F, right? Yes. So, this has been brought up, I think, by Mrs. Alvarado, and so we went out for a request for proposal for legal services. And all 5 firms that submitted their packages met the qualifications. They are all well-known firms. They're used by many districts. Some districts use 1, some districts use all 5. It just varies from district to district to district. So we are recommending that we establish a pool, because at some point, I believe the board is going to want to interview these legal counsels. I think you're planning in July a special board meeting to interview them. The pool, each of these different firms have specialties that are important. Like, for example, DWK, Dennis, Wolverine, Kelly, they do a lot of the bond work and a lot of the facilities work, and they are specifically skilled in that. And that we use them as our bond counsel when we went through the process. This allows us to establish contracts. Doesn't mean that we're going to be using them, but it allows us to have them available. We don't pay a retainer or a lump sum or anything of that sort. We only pay when we use them.
I make a motion to award an RFP for legal services to establish a pool of legal firms.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Cipriano, are you in favor?
I would aye for it.
Where are we? Okay.
Just to be clear here, I was the one that asked that this be brought back before the board. It was tabled at a previous meeting, and my belief is that we have a group of employees who weren't privy to the closed session conversation, and that as a board we should make it clear as to why this item was removed relative to that. So I'm going to move that we approve item 17G.
Second.
Discussion?
Thank you, I appreciate that second, so we can have a further discussion. I just feel like we've singled out a group of employees. We gave over $6 million in raises to 2 groups of employees, and we have less than $500,000 for the remaining group that would be awarded that. And I've heard a number of board members comment about how important this group of people is, but unfortunately I think this tabling of this item sent the wrong message, because I think all of us as board members appreciate the work of our principals and administrators who do the work in this district. The other thing that's came to me in the last few weeks is that there was an accusation that the board was targeting employees, and I would tell you, I would say I don't see that happening, but when that accusation gets out there that there was a group of people that were being sort of singled out, I thought it was important that the board would have an opportunity to make those clarifications and talk about this in the open session. So there we are.
Okay, I'll start it off. And you're all over here, so I'll just look right at you. And some of you have talked to me personally, and I thank you for sharing your thoughts, even though some of them were very honest. My first thing I want to say is, where the heck are we going to get the money? So we were in a bind. We had no choice because of the agreement that was made a few years ago of a formula to put in the teacher's contract. We had no choice to say, we don't have the money, so you don't get the raise. We were bound to give that raise. And because of CSEA's, me too, they got the raise. If we didn't have that, they probably would not have gotten the raise because we don't have the money. So I get a little conflicted when I have principals coming in tears saying, I need help at my site. I have so many needy kids. I have kids eloping and trying to get off of my campus. I have 3 special day classes and I don't have help. Our FTEs are cut. All these things are cut. Where are we supposed to get the money? When I read things that people are writing, it's like, where are we supposed to get the money? It's not one group against the other. We were in a bind. We didn't have a choice. We promised you we would not forget you as soon as we can, because we do appreciate everything that you do. And I think if you've talked to me, if you've worked with me, you know I appreciate what you do. So for people to throw accusations out there and saying we're trying to divide groups, we're not the ones trying to divide groups. We're the ones trying to get your kids a good education and help to make your life a little bit better so you can do the jobs that you have to go in and do every day. It's really sad, I was going to use another word, but I won't, that this is how it is, but it is reality. And we got stuck in a situation that we shouldn't have been.
I would agree with the obligation that we had because of that formula, especially with the amount of money we had to cut right after that formula was established and given. We had no other choice. We had no other choice. Legally, that formula was there.
You're all appreciated by everyone. There is not one group that is better than another. We're all here for the same reason, as to give our students the best education we can possibly give them. Like I said earlier, we tore apart the LCAP. We should tear apart the budget so that we can educate our students. We can't keep using formulas that are not working for our district. That part of it needs to change. There were 6 different numbers for the raises for certificated. 6 different ones before the county finally said, yes, this is the right one. 6 different ones. So a letter should have never have gone out until that number was a firm number. That was one of the mistakes that was made. I'm really, really, really sorry. I wish I had money to give you all the raise. I would give it to you in a heartbeat. But we just can't do it on the backs of our students' education. And we had to do the raises for certificated and classified because of the formula and the bargaining unit the way it is.
Cipriano?
I think my comments, I think we all know where we are with the budget. It's not been an easy year to have to cut, and you know, when parents ask me, like, these programs make a difference, I'm like, absolutely. But at the same time, we have to make cuts to meet the needs of our revenue. And with it, you know, how do we, the thing that comes to mind for me is like, how do we, what do we need to do to make sure that we're fully funded, and right now we're not getting our fair share as it relates to state revenue, having a good budget economy. So it's hard to get a salary increase when we're having to make budget cuts. And I know that we have that formula with the other partners. That doesn't make it easy to have to cut APs, have to cut other areas to, and it's a tough one.
I think one last comment I would make before we vote is that, given the perspective of what next year looks like, I doubt if we'll be able to get any employee group salary increases. So that's, I don't think it's behooving us to promise something for next year, which I don't think can happen.
Well, we certainly have to look at the principal's pay salary scale, because that's just too skewed. And just one more thing about that divisive issue, like telling your colleagues to work 3.25% less because you weren't awarded the raise is really not what VUSD needs. VUSD needs to say, you know what, we get it, we're a team, we'll step up, we'll get it done for as long as we have to send out lists and say you're gonna cut this person or do this, so all this stuff isn't gonna get done. No, that's not how a unified school district works. So maybe that work 3.25% less needs to be changed, and I'm gonna work 3.25% a little more till we get through this crisis. All in favor of giving the raise?
Aye.
All opposed? Nay.
No.
Nay.
So it was 1-4. Okay, direction to the superintendent on negotiations, use of legal counsel, so I think I brought this one up. Yeah.
So actually, Rosemary has brought it up, and sometimes I think I hear from a board member, or maybe I hear from 2 board members, and I'm not completely sure if we have concurrence of the board. So I just wanted to bring this back and get clear direction from the board. The question on the question at hand is, should we continue to use legal services present in negotiation sessions? That has been typical everywhere I've ever been to have a lawyer present. It does incur cost. I'm curious the perspective of the board, and I'd like some direction on that issue. I just need direction. I just need to hear from, I need clear direction on what the majority wants to have happen.
Well, I've been sitting in on negotiations for DTA and CSEA, and I'll tell you, it's the hardest thing I've ever had to do, because I have to sit there and not say a word,
You're doing great.
not take notes, not look at my phone, not do anything but listen. But then it's the most rewarding thing too, because I see our employees working together with the district, and I see the person who's negotiating at the head doing their job, and everybody's working together, and it is so rewarding to watch it take place. I don't feel legal counsel is necessary to be at negotiations for CSEA or DTA.
I disagree. I think we need to use legal counsel whenever possible during negotiations.
I researched this, the schools in the county, and of course I can't pull it up, but if you give me time I'll be able to. There are several districts that do not use legal in bargaining. And Martha, your district is one. They do not take lawyers in. San Marcos does not let a lawyer into their negotiations, and if you give me a minute I'll pull up the rest. But there were quite a few, and it wasn't even a thorough search with the schools. It was as many that I could reach out and get. But I'll be right back.
That's interesting to me, because my district has a 19% reserve, and they go in to negotiate with the employee groups, and they do just fine, I guess, with that number.
Donna, do you have the numbers on like the average cost when a lawyer is present for negotiation sessions?
No, I did not prepare that for tonight's meeting. I mean, I can get it and provide it to the superintendent who can provide the update. I can do that tomorrow, release it. Well,
No,
it's
it's
$265
well
an hour is what it is.
And it's
So
well into
$265 an hour times
hundreds
however
of
many hours.
thousands, the tens of thousands, because I did go through his logs and I went through every single area. And not only is he in there for negotiations, we pay them for all the lead up to negotiations, and then we pay them for the discussion after. And if they're gonna sit there all day to negotiate, we pay that $200 and some an hour. And I literally thought I was only gonna get 2 or 3 districts that do not use legal negotiations, but I got a whole a list in San Diego County. But I do have legal, I do have bargaining, but of course I don't have.
Is that rate?
So my,
Go ahead, Cipriano.
go ahead. My comment is that there are times that we may need legal, and so rather than saying altogether, let's not use legal at any time, I say let's set a cap of like a certain amount of money. And if it goes over that cap, then they need board approval. But I do believe from time to time there may be a situation where they may need legal, but let's make sure that we don't completely say no.
I think actually there are a lot of times legal is necessary for checking facts or checking language or things like that, but the actual sitting in the room, I understand the question and concern. And so I see your point, Cipriano. I don't know if it would be a dollar amount or if it would be, not for the sake of just being there, but for the sake of actually when you need counsel, you seek counsel. I can see that model.
Well, we need the numbers of what was spent this year, and that's kind of where we start at. And if we're making an effort to reduce everything in the budget, then we look at that number and then come up with a number that's reasonable so that we do have it accessible when we need it, but not just to sit hour and hour. We need to cut everywhere, including that.
Would you like us to bring back information on what we have spent and maybe the days and times and maybe get a sense of what, by what percentage you'd like to see it reduced?
I would, and I would hopefully people agree with me here, and then we can go from there.
And I would like that over the last few years. So what was spent on legal, not only for negotiations for both teams, but if they had to go to impasse and they worked with the lawyer there, because when I went through the logs, it was amazing to me. Oh, wow, we just got charged $200 and some for this. I personally look at it, Rachel, you can take this for whatever it's worth, but it's just probably nothing. You're in an important position. You've got a good living, and you should be able to read the contract and negotiate and figure it out with the other teams. And then if something gets too crazy, then you call, or actually you don't call, because working through with Peter Fagan, he had said only the superintendent and the president of the board are the two. So you would have to touch base with one of us. And so that's just one of the examples. It's like we pay our assistant soups a nice salary, and we expect them to do the work and not rely on legal for everything.
So it sounds like we'll bring back information about what our past practices have been and get some additional guidance in the conversation.
Our past practices have been to have the lawyer in there, and the lawyer goes in and the lawyer tells them, we've both been on negotiations, so we're coming. But to waste time and say past practices, we've negotiated, the lawyers have been in there, let's get them how much money we spent just on negotiations and things that go with negotiations, like a PERB, or because of that, all that goes for the last 3 years. And then I'll send the list to Chris, which then you can send to the other board members of all the districts that do not use legal in our county. And then we can decide.
Do we have to make a motion or anything, or is this just direction?
I'm looking for direction. So I think I've gotten tonight, what it is that Rosemary's hoping for. Martha did what she described. Phil, what you're hoping to see? I was asking Martha so Rosemary suggested that we take 3 years of information on what we spent in all aspects of legal services corresponding to negotiations in the past, anything negotiations related, bring it back to the board, and then we can have a conversation about, what we'd like to see in the future. In addition, Rosemary is going to send a list that she's compiled of data of districts who do not have lawyers in negotiations. Does that meet your request for information as well?
I don't want a lawyer in
No, I'm
there.
looking at Martha's. You don't want one at all, yeah. And you just want to say no.
I want a list of, I want to know how much we spend, and then I'll make a decision from there.
Okay.
I agree. Let's see the numbers.
That's good direction, thank you.
anything else from the board that you would like to share?
Yes, I, in January requested an equity audit, because I feel that, an equity audit, and, so we have, a firm that can come and present to us in July that can give us, the board, an overview of what an equity audit would entail. And then that could give us a good map for where we want to go with the LCAP and the blueprint and the budget for the following years. And it would also, you know, anyway, so I'd like that firm to come in and address the board so we can actually get that started, because I feel like that's going to drive a lot of, you know, in conversations about where we're going as a district.
That is on the docket for July. Looking forward to it.
And I'm asking where the FICMAT report is, and I've noticed that there are things in the board packet that say FICMAT approves this position or whatever, so.
They approved the guidelines for taking new positions to the board. FICMAT, I just got an email just a few minutes ago. Actually, the superintendent got a copy of it also. They were right now the report is in their internal review team. I kept on hoping, I really want to see it. No, as soon as it's done, it will be going to Dr. Kimball. It's still in the review team. They go through a legal process where they make sure they don't send out anything that's going to get them in trouble legally. And so that's where it's at. David Reed Miller just emailed me just about a half hour ago.
Yeah, we have our second strategy meeting coming up, so just be mindful of that. I'll work with Rosemary and Linda to make sure that we send out an email with details and, you know, come ready to discuss and dive into strategy or goal 2.
Will there be breakfast?
Yeah, I need to talk to you about, we don't probably,
No money for food.
I wanted to make sure that 8 o'clock was an acceptable time on a day like that.
I was looking, it was 8 to 12, 8 to 9? No.
We were thinking about doing 2 areas, so you call it.
Well, we can. I didn't hear that.
We had proposed, because we weren't able to come up with a third date, I had proposed that we do 2 goals that one day and make it a good long session. Depends on what you want to do. Start at 8 and go as long as you want.
It's July
9?
9th.
9. Tuesday, July 9th.
Just an important note, I will be on vacation. That's why you guys do it.
Okay, we're gonna leave it 8 o'clock. I'll talk with Cipriano and Rosemary and we'll define it a little bit further before that. So, thanks everybody.